Hi, Katie. It's great to have you.
Hi, yes, thank you.
I have got a couple questions for you. So you're a student in the course, and I know what you want to get funded, but for those that don't know, can you describe what you've been working on to get grant funded?
Sure. And I have a couple of projects
Yep,
going
that's cool.
right now. So I came into this, I actually started with one of your short workshops, and that was really shortly after our Project Homeless Connection event, which brings together service organizations and other resources to one place that people who are homeless or at risk of homelessness can come in and get some help all at one stop shop once a year. And so I was really of that mindset going into it, and just seeing all the need that day doing that event, I was like, I need to, save the world. I need to figure all these out. So I started doing your course, and the project I started with was um, working to fund some basic hygiene items, like the things that people just don't think about, which is funny, but toilet paper and towels and laundry detergent and
Yeah.
some of those things, and also helping to provide funding for a peer support staff, which really we've learned a lot. I work with Reentry Coalition. Sorry, should have said
Yeah, I
that.
know. I was actually thinking, I was like, wait, we should tell what organization you work with.
Right. So Reentry Coalition works with individuals reentering the community from jails and institutions. And so our current grant funding doesn't qualify, or people who don't qualify are those in pretrial who basically haven't been sentenced yet.
Huh.
And so basically when people are in pretrial, they can come out on bail or third party or ankle monitor, and they can actually, it can be years before you're sentenced. And
Really?
your court, yes. So those people they don't qualify for services under reentry programs right now. So that was one thing that I was like, okay, we need to help people who are
Yeah.
at risk of committing crimes and at risk of homelessness, but don't qualify under our grant. So that's where I went with that. And 4 weeks into this course, I started working on a grant application for a case manager position for a Reentry Coalition. And that case manager would work inside the jail with reentrants up to 90 days before release, and then after they're released, help to connect them to services and resources they needed, like substance use treatment or job training, career services, and housing, transportation, those types of things. What I'm finding is that through grants that really address homelessness, that's where I can really help
Sure.
those trial people. So
Yep, that makes sense. Okay, so yeah, you went from having never prepared a grant application ever to tackling a very complicated one. And you know that I usually am like, no way do grants last minute, but I did look over this with you and was like, okay, I think you should give it a go. And you did it. So what was some of the contributing, like what were you thinking about that kind of made you give it a go decision to pursue it?
So, in truth, I found out about it 9 days before the deadline. And in truth, I was like, I'm not doing that. That's not enough time. I'm not doing that. The person who had done our previous grant cycles, she had reviewed the RFP, and she's like, you can do this, just do it. And so, yeah, at that point, I took a couple days to sort of mill over whether or not I could do it. I didn't honestly feel like I could. But then I had you and I had her, and so I just dove into it. And honestly, it was pretty stressful. Um, I had no real expectation that I could do it myself, but I figured I'd try.
Mhm.
So
And
yeah.
you did it. You did it totally. I think something that was confusing about that grant application was when you originally shared it with me to look at, I'm like, oh, this isn't that bad. And then I was like, actually, they asked for way more, but it was like hidden, the like extra narrative questions. So then all of a sudden I was like, oh, actually, she's doing a ton of writing. I don't know what your kind of end narrative word count ended at, but it was a considerable amount of writing, and a lot of the same questions were asked.
That's what I thought too. I felt like I was repeating myself and just getting more and more in depth into it. I honestly, I felt like it would have been easier if I could have just written it all out in one narrative, but that wasn't how the application was set up. So yes.
So you made a grant narrative skeleton. Can you describe that and kind of how you laid that out? Because you did it and it looked great.
Sure. Well, I guess what I did was I just sort of briefly went over the questions and what they were asking, what they wanted from me, and with each question I sort of just I went back into the RFP, and where it says, I actually have it right here.
Nice.
Where it says like the applicant has proven, it's basically the evaluation criteria that's after the question. I went in and looked at those sections where it says the described activities are well developed, reasonable, and supportive. So when I looked at the evaluation criteria, it was much easier to develop like an outline.
Yeah.
And I think that's really where I started, because when I printed out the RFP, it's really broken up nicely on paper, the PDF version. It was much harder to see it in terms of looking at it on the online database.
So true. So what would you say were some of the biggest lessons that you took away from that grant application?
Well, one of the biggest things is that I actually, at the very end, as you know, because you helped me with this, I had gotten confused and somehow saw that like the partnership agreements and the community support documentation were the same question. So I had MOAs from like our partner organizations, and I thought that was all I needed. But then when I really went back and I was clicking all the check boxes and did a validation, it was like, you didn't answer this question. And I was like, crap, I need letters of support from people. And it's literally the day of the deadline. So I was pretty stressed about that. You were very helpful with that. And actually, I sent out an email that morning and people really responded quickly. So
yeah, cool. I was wondering how it shook out. So that's cool. What ended up happening?
So I probably had 10 people respond with letters of support, which was super cool.
Dude, that's great.
Yes, I had
on the day of.
Yes.
Sweet.
It was stressful. It was like, oh my gosh, I don't have this one thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was.
Did you end up sending out that doc I'd made up, the description? Yeah. Okay, cool. I was wondering. So I'll describe that to listeners. So basically how I teach doing letters of support, which poor Katie hasn't even gotten to in the course yet, but it was how it basically, when you're going to ask for a letter of support, it's like provide kind of a template in the sense that this is the grant we're pursuing. This is what we're going to do with it. Please put it on letterhead, address it to this person, say how you're going to help support the project. Like you're not like ghosting a letter, but you're giving them at least like some content to work with. Yeah, so I knew you were freaking out. So I did, crank that thing out for you, sent it over, and I'm so stoked that 10 people responded. That's a really great sign of support.
It really was. And actually I had more people that said, well, I sent this up the ladder, it just didn't get back in time. And so again, that was really amazing. And our board president, who really has mentored me a lot through all of this, he's like, well, I didn't have any concern because, first he said, you did the right thing and sent a template, which thanks to Meredith. Second of all, he said that because we all are in the same boat, that at some point those people are going to be asking for letters of support also. And so it's kind of like a win-win if you all are working together with that. So it was very cool. I
would not take that for granted, 10 letters coming through on the day of. So that's cool. What are you most proud of from this application and this process?
I guess the fact that I did it. I mean, my life a year ago, or even 2 years, oh my gosh, 2 years ago, I would have never thought that I'd be here at all. Or that anyone would trust me to do it, I guess, is also part of it. that it felt really good that the people who work with me, in fact, the woman I said did the prior applications and said go for it, she was, my probation officer for a short period of time. So
Yeah.
it's very awesome that these people showed trust in me. So that
You
was
stomped it. You stomped it. Your writing is good. Like, you got it. I mean, you nailed that thing. That was so awesome.
Thank you.
Seriously.
Thank
I
you.
mean, so like, what, if you're willing to share and don't feel like you need to, like, can you kind of share like what your journey has been like? Because this is really an amazing story.
Yeah, I'm used to sharing it, and honestly, if it helps other people, it's really exciting for me, I guess. So I struggled with uh, substance use disorder, addiction, and incarceration. And let's see, I'm going on 3 years here this summer. So
Nice.
yeah, I was a train wreck, and then I got some help and started volunteering with Reentry Coalition, and I'm their board vice president now, which is crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy to think that. But I had a couple of people in my life that really supported me and thought I could do it, and now it's like, I feel like I can do a lot because I've been there and I know what really truly
Helps.
doesn't work and what people really truly need. So it's that life experience aspect, I think, is helpful, and it's exciting. I really want Reentry Coalition to be successful, and I want reentrants to be successful. So I'm working pretty hard to try to make that happen. Evidence shows that rehabilitative practices work with incarceration and with people reentering. So we have some silo issues here in our community, and so it's the Reentry Coalition itself has sort of started and stopped and started and stopped with momentum. And so I'm hoping that this will be the last time that happens, that we really start to build those relationships and show the community that this works and that we can be trustful enough to do it.
What's like your next milestone, or like the thing that you've got like your eyes set on for like the next thing you'd want to reach?
Oh my gosh, that's a good one. So I think probably working on some sort of shelter or housing after this project I'm working on. Yeah, that's definitely probably where I'm gonna head, and also just to sort of figure out a way that we can make our like case manager position, when it's hired, be billable to Medicaid, so that ultimately we're not, we're sustainable and not relying on grant funding in the future, but also identifying diverse funding right now. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm the only one doing it, so it's kind of hard because everybody else is kind of busy. So
I'm just gonna say, I'm like, you're lifting some serious, like, these are some serious projects on just their own, but you can do it. So is there any other advice that you would want grant writers, aspiring grant writers, or community change makers to know?
Well, just that I guess what I have found is that, as you say, there's a lot of people who really do care about the issue. And what I've also found is that there's a lot of organizations that have some resources that they're not necessarily connecting as well to the people who have need as they could. Yeah. And what I found here, those community silos, unfortunately, is that a lot of the big resource providers here, they don't really want to communicate or interact with each other. So having this go-between with Reentry Coalition seems to be the answer to that. And so that's definitely something that I would encourage people to try to find is a way to either form a coalition or a team, as you say, that can work seamlessly with the providers and make those connections.
Right. It's like you're a neutral party of sorts. Cool. That's great advice. Well, sweet. Thank you very much for the interview. I feel like I learned a lot and people will as well.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I actually have decided that I just want to be a grant writer because you get to learn all kinds of stuff. Like you
And
probably have knowledge of everything in the world.
no, it's funny. This is what it is. You learn enough to be dangerous, right? Because you learn enough about all of these things because you have to learn it well enough to write about it intelligently, but you're not actually an expert.
Right.
Yeah, and that's pretty fun.
Yeah, no, general knowledge of everything. It's definitely compelling me to want to be a grant writer for sure.
Nice. Cool. This is good to know. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.